Good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Hope you guys are doing well. And we are still smack dab in the middle of the dead season for the NFL calendar. Not a heck of a lot's going on. In fact, so little is going on that the closest thing we have to interesting discussion points are people trying to sell this notion that the Seahawks might trade for Aaron Donald. I've actually had people come into my Twitch chat asking about, hey, do you think we're going to trade for Aaron Donald? So that's how down bad we are right now, looking for things to talk about. Real quick, before I address the actual topic in this video, no, I don't think the Rams are going to trade Aaron Donald within the division. Not happening. So, yeah, not a lot to talk about right now, but sometimes a discussion topic kind of just manifests itself without the team necessarily doing anything to provoke it. So, PFF released an article a handful of days ago, and they mentioned the Seahawks in a pretty, yeah, I'll say negative way. They talked about the Seahawks in a pretty negative fashion. And this is one of the things Seahawks fans are talking about right now. So, PFF released their 2023 NFL offensive line rankings, where they rank each offensive line as a unit from 1 to 31. And this is a list that PFF, I believe, maintains throughout the season. They have a certain ranking at the start of the year, and then they adjust the ranking as the year goes on, and by the end, it's whatever it is. So, going into this upcoming 2023 season, the Eagles are ranked as the number one offensive line, which is absolutely correct, and I don't feel the need to say too much about it other than, yeah, that is certainly correct. You've got teams like the Browns, you've got teams like the Chiefs up here, the Ravens, but where are the Seattle Seahawks? Well, I'll tell you, they are right near the bottom here on PFF's list. They are all the way down here at number 30. So that means a couple things. For one, the most obvious thing it means is that there are only two teams lower on PFF's list than the Seahawks, the Cardinals and the Titans. It also means that they believe the Seahawks have gotten worse this offseason because they bumped us down by 3 spots. And also, it means that they think things haven't really changed that much from last year when they had us ranked last in the league going into the season. So let's talk about this a little bit here. Let's address the various aspects of this ranking and what it implies. So, first of all, let's just talk about being ranked 30th just in general. Basically saying we have a bottom 3 offensive line. So, my first question is, what was our offensive line last year? It had good play from the tackles, not great, but I think we got above average to occasionally maybe even good play from both of our tackles throughout the season. Our best player was our left guard, Damian Lewis. He was solidly good, occasionally very good, but he was I'd say, well above average, good, maybe even very good left tackle in this league. And then you had the center right guard combo that was really bad. We had Gabe Jackson, who is now gone, rotating in with Phil Haynes, who was, I mean, both guys were bad, I think. I think Phil Haynes was probably a little bit better, but negligibly. I think both guys were pretty much equally bad without being complete turnstiles, but close. And then we had Austin Blythe at center, who I think was one of the worst centers in the league last year. So what that implies is that that offensive line was, because as you can see, the Seahawks are down 3 spots. And what that means is that at the end of the season last year, the Seahawks ranked 27th with their offensive line on PFF. They were ranked 27th at the end of the year. So even last year, we were ranked right near the bottom of the league, according to PFF. And overall, as somebody who watched all the games, somebody who tried to keep an open mind, tried to be real with the state of this offensive line, I didn't get the sense that we had a bad offensive line. And if we truly had the 27th best offensive line in the league last year, that would make it a bad offensive line, borderline terrible. But I know what a bad offensive line looks like. I've seen it before. I watched a team that had Tom Cable coaching their offensive line before. I remember the Seahawks offensive line the year Walter Jones just completely lost it. And yeah, that was a terrible offensive line. This is not a terrible offensive line to me. But here's the thing, and here's where I kind of get it. That offensive line didn't have any star power on it, right? Like Charles Cross and Abraham Lucas, they were good for what they were, good rookies, but they were not stars. Damian Lewis was our best offensive lineman, not a star. And then, of course, the Gabe Jackson, Austin Blythe combo. There's definitely not a star in there. You look at most offensive lines in the league, especially the good ones, but even some of the lesser ones, you can usually find one guy that guy's really good. That guy is one of the best in the league at his position. You know, like the Eagles, they've got Lane Johnson. The Chiefs, they've got Creed Humphrey. The 49ers, they've got Trent Williams. And I wouldn't even consider the 49ers to have one of the best offensive lines, but the point is, they've got a lock-it-down superstar who, when the going gets tough, they can count on to shut down a really good pass rusher or be the guy they run behind on key downs where they need to pick up a few yards. We don't really have anything like that. So I can definitely see where even though the unit is playing passably, they get knocked a little bit because they don't have that put it in the bank superstar. Like, think about it this way. Did any Seahawks offensive lineman last year deserve to even sniff the Pro Bowl? I would say probably not. Damian Lewis was our best player. I think he was really good, but I don't think he deserved to make the Pro Bowl. I think he's one of the better left guards in the league, but I don't think he's one of the best. So I kind of see it from that angle. But here's the thing that I'm not really getting here. So they have the Seahawks offensive line getting worse this offseason. And they have our offensive line basically not getting better after last season. They went from 32nd to 30th, which basically means you improved by a tiny amount that doesn't really matter, and basically you didn't get better. I find that hard to believe. Like, you take a look at the Seahawks offensive line right now, and I'm just going to look at the starters, because I'm pretty sure these PFF articles are written with the starters in mind. I don't think they're thinking about depth or backups or swing tackles or whatever. They're just looking at the 5 starters. You've got Charles Cross and Abraham Lucas starting at left and right tackle. Those guys were rookies last year. Cross in particular was very young last year. He was, 21? So the thought of those guys not getting better just kind of by default, like, how many times in NFL history have you seen a 21-year-old left tackle go in his rookie year, play fairly well, and then that's just the best he ever plays? I would be shocked if you could find it pretty much ever happening. That's just not something you would ever expect. You get older, you get more experience, you get a little bigger, you get a little stronger, and you just get better kind of by default. It's like getting your VC in NBA 2K when you're playing My Player. You're going to spend your VC, you're going to get better, and it's impossible for you to not become a better player pretty much. So thinking that Cross is not going to get significantly better at the most important position on the offensive line, like, to me, that's just kind of flying in the face of all logic and reason. And same goes for Abraham Lucas, who I do think played a little bit better than Cross last year, and I do think has probably a little bit of a lower ceiling because he is already 23 going on 24. He might already be 24 now, actually. He still was a rookie last year, and to me, it's a slam dunk that he's going to get better. So you've got your 2 tackles who are pretty much just kind of by default going to improve this season. And if you read the little blurb from PFF over here about Cross and Lucas, they say, while both played well early, each fell off substantially as their rookie seasons wore on. I watched all the Seahawks games, and I got to tell you, that was not my impression. I didn't notice any kind of a significant drop-off from Cross or Lucas. And I actually went to PFF's own rankings, and I looked at the game-by-game rankings of Cross and Lucas. I didn't really see tailing off of their grades. So I don't know where PFF is getting this idea that they fell off substantially as their rookie seasons wore on. In fact, not that this necessarily guarantees anything, but to my knowledge, the one game last year where Cross gave up multiple sacks was week 1. And Abraham Lucas, I'm pretty much positive, had his best graded game of the year in week 18. So I don't know why PFF thinks this. Their own grading system doesn't even seem to think it. But this idea that Cross and Lucas peaked in the first half of their rookie year, not only does it not really make much sense when you look at those players and how they played throughout the season, but it also doesn't really make much sense when you just think about it logically. But you got those two guys, and then you've got Damian Lewis, who is in a contract year. This is the year that is going to define what his next contract is going to look like. And he is not somebody who has played so well over the last 3 years that he's guaranteed big money. He needs to play well this season to secure that bag. The better he plays, the more money he gets. So, honestly, I think Damian Lewis is extremely likely to look better this year than he did even last year. Now, he'll never be perfect for this system. He'll never be a perfect fit in this offense. But I do think he's going to continue to play well, and I imagine he's going to get better. And I'm sorry, but look, maybe I'm overrating Evan Brown. That is totally possible. I admit I could be overrating Evan Brown significantly here. He could be a below average, maybe even bad center. I'm sorry, there is no way he's going to be worse than what we had last year with Austin Blythe. It's pretty much impossible. So even if Evan Brown ends up being bad or below average, it's still better than what we had before. And I kind of feel like the same logic has to apply to the right guard spot. It was bad last year. And don't get me wrong, Phil Haynes was part of that badness. I don't have a lot of faith in Phil Haynes, but at the same time, right guard is the least important position on the offensive line. Maybe it's the least important position on the entire offense outside of, like, fullback. So, honestly, I'm not that concerned about it. And if Phil Haynes is that bad, maybe Bradford subs in for him, which, hey, that's not the greatest thing in the world to me either. I'm not crazy about that scenario, but either way, I can live with a bad right guard if the other positions are going well. And to me, like, I know what I just said about Evan Brown, but realistically, I think he is going to be at least an average center. You look at last year, a big problem that our offensive line had was we couldn't run the ball up the middle, which Pete Carroll loves to do, because we couldn't get push from Austin Blythe and Gabe Jackson / Phil Haynes. They just couldn't get push. I gotta believe Evan Brown is going to generate more push than Austin Blythe, because Austin Blythe didn't generate any. And honestly, there's evidence that Evan Brown is better than an average center. He's been an better than average center before when he was a member of the Lions. So I'm not really understanding how PFF is coming to the conclusion that this Seahawks offensive line is basically the same offensive line they had last year, like literally 2 spots higher, and got worse since the season ended. Now, the only other possibility is that every other team in the league just happened to get so much better on the offensive line that they still outstrip what we're doing. Like, we got better, but everyone else got better by more. Something like that. Which, okay, I guess it's possible, but that implies that every team in the league outside of, like, 2 teams has at least an okay offensive line, which that means you just have to rescale things, because if everybody has a good offensive line, then you need to reconsider what your standards are for a good offensive line. Everybody gets graded against themselves, right? So those are my thoughts on this PFF ranking. I did a rough offensive line ranking kind of for my own purposes a few weeks ago, and I came to the conclusion that the Seahawks were probably going to have an offensive line somewhere in the middle of the league, like 16, 17. I could see it go as low as 20. I could see it go as high as like 12. But I can't imagine us having a bottom 3 offensive line. I just can't. And watching the team last year, which had what I think is a clearly worse offensive line than what this team will have, yeah, it had problems. Couldn't run the ball up the middle. Had 2 significant weak spots on the offensive line. Had some bad games from our rookie tackles. I never got the sense that it was one of the worst offensive lines in the league, honestly. So it might just be a question of star power. All right, see you guys later. Go Hawks. Let me know what you think down below. But those are my thoughts on the offensive line.